Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to Mahindra Insurance Brokers webinar on cybersecurity is everybody's business. We have speakers from Mahindra Insurance Brokers and from Mindzen India Pvt Limited. The duration of webinar is 1 hour. Please feel free to post your questions in chat box anytime during the webinar. We have allocated 35 to 40 minutes on content deliberation, post which we will take up the questions. So let me take this opportunity to introduce Mahindra Insurance Brokers Limited. We fondly call it as MIBL. Mahindra Insurance Brokers Limited, MIBL, is a subsidiary of Mahindra and Mahindra Financial Services Limited. Since inception in 2004, MIBL's role encompasses various activities right from risk profiling to claims administration for customers. We are one of the leaders in the space of risk advisory and risk consultancy for large corporates. As composite insurance brokers, we endeavor to provide the best of advice to corporates to ring-fence their business against any insurable eventuality in the best possible manner. We offer bespoke solutions that revolve around unique business needs, right from insuring assets, offices, factories, employees, supply chain risk, digital footprint, legal liabilities, financial uncertainties, to name a few. Our experts with understanding and knowledge of international regulations are well trained in handling risk in any geographies of the world and ensure your business is compliant with the local regulations in respective geographies. So with this, I will just introduce our speakers. We have 3 speakers in today's webinar. I'm Vaisakhi Shah. I'm going to be one of the speakers. So I will introduce myself. I'm handling liability and specialty lines in Mahindra Insurance Brokers. I have experience of more than 15 years in liability line of business. I have designed and structured risk management strategies and placed complex programs for various industries such as energy, pharma, hospitality, manufacturing, IT, ITS, financial institutions, auto components, and infrastructure. I have handled large claims for tech and manufacturing sectors as well. And I have been a visiting faculty in III, that is Indian Insurance Institute, and other educational institutions as well. So our another speaker is Mr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar, who is product head and director at Mindzen India Pvt Limited, has over 15 years of experience in fintech product strategy, design, and development. He has designed and delivered over 8 enterprise-grade B2B and B2B2C products that have seen more than 10 million hits on usage. His products or services are in use with insurers like HDFC Health in India and with Reliance General Insurance in East Africa. He was the mentor of the Gen Y team of SRM University that bagged the first prize in 2018. He continues to serve them as adjunct professor of machine learning and artificial intelligence. We have our third esteemed speaker, Mr. Sivaram Tadepalli, who is a proven IT leader with 45 years of experience in IT. He has played vital role in implementing large projects in defense, banking, airports, and smart cities. He has immense knowledge in security, AI/ML, and new generation technologies. He has contributed to building strong teams, skill development, and timely completion of projects. He has been mentoring young talent and assisting educational institutions to be in line with the new technologies. So coming back to our webinar on cybersecurity is everybody's business. So why we are talking about cybersecurity and why it is gaining popularity? Technology has been the silver lining during last 2 years of coronavirus pandemic as communication, business, and personal interactions have moved online to a great extent. Sudden surge in digital adoption left little time to develop robust security framework for most of the organizations across the globe. There is steep increase in loss of confidential, personal, or corporate information via hacking, phishing, or ransomware attacks. System outages are very common, which cause interruption to operations, thus resulting into loss of revenue. The amount involved in this type of losses run into millions of dollars. In the last 6 years, the number of such cases are rising steadily, and it was the highest during COVID-19 pandemic period. Cyber attack can come from anywhere at any time and can be more destructive than some forms of natural disasters, leading to operational, financial, or reputational damages, which cannot be recovered or repaired. Threat actors are invasive and targeting new sectors, industries, and data types. Cyber threats have become matter of huge concern, and that is where I will request Mr. Kumar and Mr. Sivaram to share their valuable thoughts on cybersecurity threats and ways to prevent attacks.
Okay. Thank you, Vaisakhi. Thanks so much. So let's start. As you just heard, cybersecurity is everybody's business. It's nowadays it's not just confined to some levels of IT companies, IT majors, or cloud companies. It affects everybody. Everybody has some finger in the pie as far as IT goes, and everybody needs to be aware that nothing is safe. Nothing is safe from hackers who can steal, who can kind of cause ransomware kind of attacks, who can really generally make life miserable. So one needs to be really on the guard. So that's why the topic is cybersecurity is everybody's business. Okay, so let's generally look at how people define it and what it's all about. So Gartner defines it as the potential for an unplanned negative business outcome. It's a very nice corporate way of saying they do something that you did not expect. Okay, and the risk can be quantified as a likelihood, which is a number. The number is not derivable so easily because it's a complex process of evolving a probabilistic model. So there is a likelihood. And to that you add the impact. Impact can be quantified to some extent, not to full extent, but it can be quantified. So that's your risk defined. And is it easy to understand and plan? The answer is no, because the scenario that existed yesterday is not what exists today. Even in terms of, if you define it as number of hours, the threat that existed yesterday need not exist today. And the threat that did not exist yesterday might have become very active today. That's how the web is. Every day something new is coming up. And we keep contributing to it. When you develop a new technology and deploy it, you are creating a vulnerability, you are creating a hole. There are so much pressures to deploy it soon, so it comes out untested. People have, the same team has conflicting interests to take care of, not deliberately, but in their own sense. Everybody has a certain vision and certain goal and certain target. So they tend to prioritize their actions based on that. And that in turn gives rise to unforeseen actions. Okay. So I just took a simple example of what the construction industry was in the 1800s. That's what is existing in cyber risk today. So back in the 1800s, the construction industry did not have documentation, did not plan for risk, could not predict bad weather, could not predict weather for that matter. So they could not predict bad weather. They could not predict strength and structure of materials, leading to catastrophic losses. We are at a very similar position today. We are not able to predict because we do not know the strength of components involved. More importantly, you do not know the strength of the attacker involved. You do not know the tools that are deployed to forgery attack. Okay, so what did the insurance companies do way back? They were able to mitigate it by putting together some data, actuarial data basically. So what loss did they have, what loss occurred, in what format, originating where, what caused it, how could it be mitigated? Even simple things like not storing the fuel and raw material in the same godown is a risk mitigating act. But somebody from the insurance company had to give it as a suggestion, or as a risk mitigating activity check. Till then they did not know. So that's where we are today. You need expert advice, experts like my co-speaker, Mr. Sivaram, whom I consider my mentor and guru, who is a practicing cyber risk analyst. So they would be able to give us basic steps that needs to be done. But to understand what basic steps that needs to be done, you need to understand the kind of attack somebody might mount, the kind of risks that are facing when you have a web asset like a server facing the internet. So to sum up, the construction and insurance industries created a bell curve. When I say bell curve, a very simple graph which says over time how many incidents have occurred and what cost it. Okay. So if you are within the bell curve in your risk management practice, it's considered an acceptable level of risk. So when
Kumar, can you share the presentation?
Oh. Sorry. Is it on now?
Yeah, this one.
Okay. So when you say you are inside the bell curve, you have an acceptable level of risk. It simply means it's a manageable risk. It's not an avoidable risk. It's a manageable risk. And if you are outside it, then you really will have to consider making some changes to the way you mitigate the risk or you deal with the risk. And I would like to quote Martin Chemical on that, which I picked up from darkreading.com. I thought I should share that with the viewers. So whose job is it to mitigate cyber risk? Is it only the IT head? Is it the COO? Is it just the CEO? My answer would be everybody should be, because in a modern management parlance, there are different stakeholders with different targets and different priorities, and you could say they all have different horses in the same race. Okay, they would all like their horse to win. So everybody should be a stakeholder. Everybody should be a participant. Everybody should contribute to the fact saying, okay, this is my priority. Then you can sit and decide, okay, I have only so much money. So where do I deploy it? Do I deploy it on my cloud asset? Do I deploy it more on testing my product, which I'm going to release? Or do I deploy it on mitigating an existing asset that's already running and giving me revenue? So there could be conflicting viewpoints. So everybody should get together and figure out a way to manage the risk with the existing resource. Okay. So I am just giving a rough set of steps. So you need to know your IT environment and assets. You need to develop a very robust cyber security policy and keep reviewing it often. And teach cybersecurity and its risks to everybody who gets onboarded to the value chain. And definitely have a set of actionable tasks in case there is even an iota of doubt that something is exposed. And enforce really strict security protocols. You still see people giving out passwords on the phone. You see people setting very grossly inadequate passwords. I still see 1, 2, 3, 4 passwords, as a practice. And it should be real time and it should be visible. That's more important. So with this, I would like to hand the baton to Mr. Shivram. So he will take us through some potential threats that are there, and he will sum it up with saying about how to, overcome it and what kind of steps one can do to mitigate it. Over to Mr. Shivram.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. And I request you to kindly help me in moving to the next slide when we both agree to go to the next slide. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure to share with you some of the information which I have with me and which I have been working for the past few years in this critical field. As you know, as mentioned earlier by earlier speakers, we have 10 major cyber attacks. That means 10 ways your business, your assets, your personal data can be changed or shared. First is called what is called malware, phishing, man in the middle, password attacks, SQL injection attacks, denial of service or DDoS attacks, insiders attacks, cryptojacking, zero-day exploitation, 10. The 10th one is the watering hole attack. So these are the types of attacks the hackers have designed, and they are more intelligent than us, or we are at par with them. They will be every day in and out, try to see how they can make their attacking philosophy, attacking tools more powerful. So it is a very much necessity now in every organization, starting from the lowest grade employee to the chairman. What are the things he or she should do while they are working with the computers? Next slide, please. So a cyber security threat is a warning of a cyber attack. The threat means it is an attack which may result in loss of data and financial loss or reputational damage due to this unauthorized access. To give an example, many times earlier attacks are not so great, but the moment DDoS attacks have started, there is a lot of damage done to the users, to the companies, to the organizations, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, no, one side forward. Back. Now, malware attack is the most common type of cyber attack. What it does is, the malware software refers to a malicious software called virus in those days, and there are several types of these viruses. Some of them are called Trojan, worm, adware, ransomware, and spyware. I'll just briefly mention some of these things. Trojanware is a virus which can be introduced into a system, and he can plan, please activate the virus on such and such a date. And once it is started, the whole computer will become to a halt, and it becomes it creates a lot of problem. Worm attack is, it will go into the computer, it replicates itself in several places. So even if you remove from one space, one location, it still exists in other locations. The adware is, you are getting an advertisements in your things. You can sometimes click a link and see an advertisement. This advertisement consists of a virus attack which automatically enters your computer. The most dangerous avatar of viruses is the ransomware attack, and people started how they can make money using hacking as a business. Several companies, several organizations are attacked by this, and in India, last 2 years, the number of people affected by ransomware is very large. What it happens is, on a fine day when you switch on the system gives a message, now your system is locked. It is under my control. You have to pay X million dollars to the following cryptocurrency mode. Until unless it is mode, whatever you do, you cannot open your system. That is so much power that ransomware has, and people have made a lot of money, and there are lots of solutions that are coming to address the ransomware. Still, there is a possibility of ransomware making our business and getting impacted largely. And another thing is malware malware is again comes by means of a mail. Suppose you receive a mail from an unknown source and if you open it, automatically from that mail, the virus enters into your system and sits there and does its task of what I call spoiling your data, changing your data, copying the data, and creating havoc to your system and to you. This is also basically called a social engineering attack because it can come from any mail source which you do not know or which you know, it can attack your system. Next. So phishing attack is the most damaging, damage-causing virus because it is a practice when there are now, most of you might have seen, fake mails will come. Emails will come with fake emails, and these fake emails will install a malware into your system and steal sensitive data. This is also a sort of a short, what we call social engineering attack. Coming back to the most easily trapped attack is password attacks. Just I would like to, password building is a art. Password building is it reflects the way you make your password complex so that anybody cannot guess it. In many industries, we have done, me and some of my friends who work in different organizations with whom we share the data. If you analyze the passwords by using a different method, people found out 70% of the passwords are wife's name, children's name, God's name, or their name in a different form. So it gives you, this particular hacker has a tool by means of which your password is tested, checked for a number of times, and a correct password is obtained by his software, by using which he can damage your whole thing. So password handling, password building, password using is one of the, what you call a task which all of us have to do very systematically by understanding the advantages of using strong passwords. Second thing is man in the middle attack. See, you try to go to a website, and the website, suppose if you want to go to the site of a bank, they design a screen which is similar to that, and then you will be going to the hacker's hand rather to the bank, and your transactions are captured by the hacker, and you will have a lot of problems with your data. So the problem here the problem here is a lot of people use outside free Wi-Fi usage. Free Wi-Fi usage is dangerous because it doesn't have any correction systems, any safeguard systems, and it is the place where your information you can lose very easily. Sir, next please. For those people who know databases, SQL injection attack is a very, very complex database driven viruses. They enter into the databases and manipulate the database such a way that you can never use it afterwards. And this, how do you protect it? There are certain methods where intrusion detector systems can be used, and then you can have a good solution. But this is a major scare for banks, financial institutions, and other, where most of the data is in the computer in the database format, and they have to do additional care and investment in keeping that particular data very safe and careful. Now next comes denial of service. This is that attack which when I was started working with on the first day of Hyderabad airport before the inauguration. For 3 days, we have to fight with the hackers. When they attack, what happens is, suppose you have an entry gate into a function hall where you allow people with tickets. So when people come in line, nothing will be, everybody can go inside. Suddenly, there is a rush of about few 100,000 people at the gate. The regular people who have tickets cannot go, and these people will, when we don't want to allow the non-ticket holders inside. That means in our case, the non-ticket holders are our data. The unknown ticket hold people who are coming there, they're all hacker generated packets. So what happens at any instant of time at the entrance, there will be millions of people who want to enter where unless and until we check, we will not allow anybody. So this causes nobody will enter, and all the services the computer has to do will be stopped. This is what is called denial of service. And this is the most commonly used one on medium enterprises and small scale enterprises and create havoc for them. And this denial of services also distributory type of denial services. Suppose your organization has 6 entry gates. You control the people entering into some 3-4 gates. If one gate is blocked, immediately they stop. They go to the second gate and stop that. So we call the duplicate, multiple type of gates getting infected by means of this virus is a very, very dangerous thing, and all of us should try to protect our assets by following some of the standard methods which I will try to inform. And the most difficult attack, difficult virus, difficult type of these attacks are insider attacks. In every organization, there are people who are grudged employees against the management, against the teams, etc. So they, at some instant of time, when they get a chance, they change few things when they get the knowledge of the password or knowledge of some other thing. They attempt to spoil that. To stop this type of viruses, there is no direct solution so far. It is the organization's access control, the delegation of powers, to what extent an employee can handle the important data. All these things is a very complex exercise, but one has to do if the employee size is, let's say, 500 or more than 500 or even less than 500. Employee insider threat is the most complex, that especially from the people point of view. Sir, next please. Now, cryptojacking. This is the new type of, most of you may be knowing cryptocurrency or bitcoins. So people are trying to attack when somebody, even he knows that I have some bitcoins on my account, they enter into my PC and they can search for my Bitcoin area where I interact with my Bitcoin teams and Bitcoin access activities, and capture that particular knowledge and try to make me incur a loss in this particular business. So cryptojacking it is called, where all my resources which I have with me are in a very dynamic way, they change their value, making you to land up in losses and all that. So this is another difficult area, because cryptocurrency is still not becoming very popular. But wherever it is popular in the West or in the Europe, the crypto mining and the crypto stealing of this this currency is a major havoc. And one more thing is, most of the companies, when they sell you this operating system or application, suddenly they discover that some bug is there. As a genuine manufacturer, genuine vendor, they announce that I have a bug in my particular package. This particular thing may cause some havoc, some problems for you. Please careful. And that is taken as an opportunity by the hackers, and they make a virus such that they will go that in that particular small gap which the company said next 8. Now suppose today is 5th. They say by 7th morning you will have a patch. They will see that by 5th the viruses enter into your system and create a problem. Afterwards, you get a patch and apply it for removing this type of virus. By the time the dimension is also the damage is already done. And the last but not the least is what is called a waterfall attack. It is an attack on frequently used websites. For example, some of the websites which we use very frequently, and there are various methods of depicting this the fake websites looking like the actual websites. And if you make an entry there and try to interact with them, all your personal data, all your privacy data, and can be taken away, and it can be used for dangerous purposes, which you know these days what is happening in WhatsApp, Facebook, etc. This is one of the type of viruses attacks, where people take your personal data and use it for difficult other things. Next, please. So, how do we prevent the cyber attacks? One is update and use a strong password. What is a strong password? Generally, it should consist of at least 8 and should contain numbers, alphanumerics, and special characters. Alphabet, numbers, and special characters. This should be made in such a way any other person who is with you or you yourself should be careful about handling it, and this should be remembered. If you forget it second time, to get an access for you will be difficult. If you note it down in a book, again there is a risk of losing it. So you should make it yourself a method how I will use, what type of password I should use, and whether I am meeting all these conditions. Length of the password is 8 characters. Numbers are used. Small alphabets are used. Other set of alphabets. Special characters are used. And then these are all things should be looked at it. Similarly, when the patches, when they come, people who manage these things will not apply it immediately. So we must make a policy. Once the patch comes, immediately it should be installed in the system, so that we don't get affected by zero time attacks. Similarly, for most of the things, there are 5 devices what are called firewalls and viruses from various known companies like Norton and all that. They should be used in the right time and right place. And you must be able to understand how phishing occurs, and the people should be trained up how to avoid, how to detect the phishing exercise by the hackers initially. And there is what is called virtual private network. This is a dedicated type of connectivity you have, which will give you a best type of best type of protection to your system. And there is one rule. The one rule, I don't know, most of the people won't follow that, but whenever you have a system, the data backup should be in three copies. 3 copies should be available in two different types of media. That means one in disk, one in tape, or whatever you feel two different media should be available. The most difficult and the most urgent thing which all of us have to do for every day is the training of all employees in cyber security. If an employee is not trained properly, whatever measure you do, whatever amount of money you do, we cannot establish a good secure system. And another to all of the people, I would like to request, please don't open mails from unknown services. This is a great risk to you, to your system, and to the company to whom you are working. Next, please. Next slide, please. So another point here, you might have already understood, there is what is called we need to have what is called two-factor authentication. When you have your password and also your employee's number. So this is called authentication of a customer by means of 2 or 3. Sometimes we use now mostly banks were using two-factor authentication, and very soon we will be using 3-factor authentication by looking at our facial recognition and all that. And please avoid public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi, please avoid. Don't use it for anywhere office purposes. Nowadays, the data which you are getting in PCs and laptops is also available in mobiles also. So there is now a big demand for protecting your mobiles against this type of data theft. This year, it is the Maryland University in the US has assumed that $133 billion will be spent on cyber security by various companies. Next, please. Perhaps it's the last. So, what are the new developments in cyber security? There is what is called threat. First ones. Okay. So finally, putting together what we should do is one more slide. Please one slide back. So there are new things coming up. What is called threat hunting and threat intelligence. Second thing is continuous monitoring of network and security by implementing network operating center and security operating centers. Now there are certain companies who offer to take care of your security as a service. And now look, with the growth in the AI and ML, AI/ML is continuously powerful, giving power to the user, how he can detect the threat, how they can get prepared before the thing happens. And some places we have data privacy. Our government also has come up with a policy which will be cleared very soon. There is agencies which help you to make this data privacy. Mobile services, multi-factor authenticating, mobile security, mobile device management are the new things. Last slide, please. So please update your passwords, update your software with patches, use firewalls and network tools, be aware of phishing scams, use a VPN, backup and the system at least 3 copies, educate and train all employees. This is the maximum and a very much important thing. The last but not the least is every 6 months, the company should know what are its vulnerabilities, and these are done by means of doing what is called a VAPT test. VAPT test, vulnerabilities testing. By looking at that, you know how many openings are in entry into your house and how you can again quickly act upon to close all the non-compliances and make your stay comfortable. This VAPT analysis every 6 months, at least once, once in a year should be done to keep the health of the thing, health of your organization, health of your data safe, and you can be protected yourself by means of from cyber attacks. So thank you. Last slide, please. Yeah, thank you very much for this time given. I hope I have not overtaken my time limit.
Thank you, Mr. Sivaram. Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for such wonderful insight on cyber threats and how to prevent cyber attacks. So now I will just quickly take participants through a risk transfer mechanism. So how to, obviously, when organizations are spending tons of money in cyber security framework, but hackers are 24/7 ahead of us, and they know how to get into a system. They know all the zero-day vulnerabilities. There are advanced persistent threat groups which are active out there in virtual world, and they exactly know when to get into a system and how to stimulate an attack. So there is a risk transfer mechanism which is available. We call it as a cyber liability insurance policy. I will just share my screen. Yeah, so here there is worldwide statistics. This is the study done by Net Diligence company. If you look at the sectors, up till now, like few years back, there was a misperception or misconception in the market that, only financial institutions are vulnerable to cyber attacks. But if you look at the industries which have been attacked or sectors which have been attacked of late, and especially last 2 years of pandemic, you will see all the kind of industries or sectors they've been attacked or they are under attack, be it professional services, healthcare, oil and gas, technology, manufacturing, financial services. In fact, manufacturing companies are more vulnerable to cyber attacks because first, they are not too much worried about their vulnerabilities in the system. They might not have that much strong framework, cybersecurity framework as compared to some of the financial services or financial institutions or some of the ITs companies. And the cause of loss, as Mr. Kumar and Mr. Shivram mentioned, ransomware is the worst, I would say, attack to happen on any of the organization. And ransomware can actually destroy an organization like anything, because ransomware attack not only requires the company to pay ransom in cryptocurrency form, but also it has a long lasting impact, because even if you come out of the ransomware attack, you will need to find out the root cause, where the attack or where the malware is sitting in your system. You will have to cleanse your system. You will have to still notify your end users or your customers about this likelihood of an attack, because it might have happened so that the hackers or attackers, they've already compromised the data. They've stolen the data, and they can anytime exploit that data which is under their custody. So these are some of the causes of loss which we have seen world over. Ransomware is the worst attack, and India is third most hit country when it comes to ransomware attacks. So in last 6 years, we have seen a number of such attacks happening on Indian organizations as well. So as and when there is a risk or there is a vulnerability, obviously there is going to be a regulation or regulatory environment is going to be there, which is going to put more emphasis on having robust security framework. Not only that, the regulators also want the organizations to become responsible and liable for the kind of data which is resting under their custody control. And if that data is compromised, the organization is also liable to pay regulatory fines, penalties. So this map will give you idea about what are the kind of privacy regulations across the globe, and which are the countries or jurisdictions where it is very stringent. So if you look at US, Canada, if you look at China, if you look at European region, Australia, these are some of the jurisdictions where there are very stringent privacy regulations in place. And if you look at the GDPR is the most prevalent, or I would say it is the first ever regulation to come up in, globally, having a lot of emphasis on data privacy and also putting onus on the organizations where the data is compromised. And these fines are huge. So these fines run into, close to 4% of the total global turnover, or 20 million GBP. The fines are as high as this. So if you look at this GDPR fines, it was implemented or enacted in 2018 in European region, and most of the companies world over, even if it is an Indian registered entity, but if that entity has European citizens' data resting on their server, they are liable to comply with the GDPR regulation. And you can see the fines, the kind of fines, heavy fines which are being put on some of the organizations, be it Amazon, Instagram, WhatsApp. So this slide will give you idea about the kind of penalties which are levied upon on some of the organizations where there is a data breach, or where some of the articles of GDPRs are not being complied with. The organizations are facing huge penalties, and not always that regulatory fines, penalties are insurable. It is again driven by the law of land. So some of the jurisdictions allow the insurability of fines, penalties. Some of the geographies, there is no clarity. Some of the geographies, they just simply do not allow the fines, penalties to be insurable. So as Mr. Kumar and Mr. Sivaram highlighted, what are the cyber risks? So here is a comprehensive list. It can be vendor system vulnerability. Now, what is vendor system vulnerability? Your systems are interlinked with your vendor. There is a vulnerability, there is an attack in the vendor system, and it travels, the malware or ransomware travels from vendor system to your system. Who is the principal here? And that is how the attacks spread. So if you look at the WannaCry ransomware, how it spreads overnight, it spreads like this. The systems are integrated, there is some vulnerability, there is a loophole in the system, and the ransomware is able to travel from one end to another end of the world within no time. Then there are some of the employee errors also. So there can be a scenario where employee is rogue employee, as in they have stolen the information, they've passed it on to the competitors, they've sold it off on darknet, or employee human error. That also can be a major cause for some of the companies to face cyber attacks. So why cyber liability insurance? We are talking about cyber liability insurance. Why is that? Why our traditional policies are not able to cover cyber liability related or cyber attack related exposure? So if you look around, commercial property and liability insurance is available in most of the insurance markets worldwide. But property policies typically only will cover damage to physical assets such as production facilities or any tangible asset, but it will still exclude cyber related exposure. And most of the other liability policies as well will not be able to offer cover for cyber related exposure. So when we started off in India back in 2013, 2014 with the cyber liability insurance, there was misconception and misselling happening that professional indemnity policy will be able to take care of cyber related exposure. But there is a basic difference. Professional indemnity policy will take care of any cyber related exposure or breach of confidentiality related exposure only and only if there is a human error. Whilst rendering professional services, there is an error at the employee's end, because of which the data has been compromised, and by virtue of the contract, the company is saddled with liability as breach of confidentiality. Only that scenario, professional indemnity policy will trigger. Otherwise, most of the liability policies will exclude any exposure related to cyber attacks or cyber exposure. In response to this situation, a specialized policy covering cyber risk has emerged in recent years. So as I mentioned, in India, we saw it for the first time in 2013, 2014, but it is as old as 25 years across the globe. So globally, cyber liability policy was much in place and much in force, and organizations were aware of the exposures they are carrying in terms of data, in terms of confidential information, and they were already purchasing it. In India, we started seeing the requirement of cyber liability policy as a part of contractual obligation. So most of the IT/ITeS companies or financial institutions, they had seen this requirement of cyber liability insurance as a part of their contractual requirement. But now, if you look around, even manufacturing companies are coming forward to purchase cyber liability policy. Even small scale companies are coming forward to purchase cyber liability insurance. So what is exactly getting covered under cyber liability insurance? That is very important to understand. So here are some of the buckets which will give us idea about the kind of coverage that is offered under cyber liability insurance. So it begins with first party loss. What do we mean by first party loss? As an organization, if there is a breach or there is a cyber attack or data is compromised, first and foremost thing what organization will do, they will look forward to forensic investigators. So that policy triggers right from forensic investigation cost. It also covers regulatory fines, penalties, regulatory inquiries, bringing in an expense in terms of investigation. It also covers notification to end users, the customers. It may be corporate, it can be an end user like you and me. Also public relation expenses. When the organization is under attack, their net worth, their reputation is at stake. And if it is a listed entity, then it can lead to a director's or officer's liability claim easily, because the share prices will fall down and there can be class action suit or litigations against the individual directors or officers owing to the drop in share prices. So public relation consultant will play a major role. They will come to the rescue of the organization which is under attack, and they will help them navigate this crisis situation and how to make a public announcement. They will guide them and they will hold their hands. And of course, legal liability, third party liability. An end user's data, if it is compromised, whether it is misused by the hackers or not, the organization becomes liable to that end user for compensation. Now in India, we are not much, worried about our privacy. But if you look at the advanced countries or Western part of the world, they are very cautious. Even if their securities, social security number is compromised, they will not think twice before bringing in a claim on that organization. So this legal liability part also is getting covered under cyber liability insurance. Last but not the least, we've been talking about ransomware attacks, big way. So the extortion or the ransom which has to be paid to the attackers in order to get the encryption key from the hackers. So that cyber extortion also gets paid under the policy. The organization will have to make payment in cryptocurrency, and the insurance company will pay them in INR or USD terms. Right. So, and again, if it is a manufacturing company and if their centralized system is under attack, then there can be a scenario that they are not able to run their systems for number of days or number of months. so that business interruption or loss of profit also gets covered under this cyber liability insurance. And because of the steep rise in claims, we have seen cyber liability market is hardening. The capacities are shrinking. Underwriters are insisting on detailed description of services. They also want to know in detail about the kind of infrastructure they have, cybersecurity framework the organizations have in place. Not only that, some of the insurance companies have started doing vulnerability assessment at their end, and that is where we as brokers also, we have also introduced we have partnered with one of the such company, such vendor, who is helping us in vulnerability assessment services. So how it works, the company, the vendor with whom we have partnered with, they actually they work closely with the target company, the prospective client. They will stimulate the cyber attack. They will carry out red team, purple team exercises, and they will actually showcase that what kind of vulnerabilities are lying in their system, what are the preventive measures they should take. Not only that, what would be the actual quantum of loss? So if you today ask any company, like we have live case where one of the small company, construction company, having only 3 crore limit, they did not have much of data, third-party data also on their server, but they were under ransomware attack, and the 3 crore limit got eroded in no time, only in forensic investigation. So the attack can actually wipe out, a single attack can actually wipe out the organization's balance sheet like anything. And that is why it is very important, imperative for the organizations to understand the real-time quantum of loss which they can suffer because of a cyber attack. And that is what is coming out in this vulnerability assessment. Not only that, even this vulnerability assessment will throw some light on the kind of limit of liability or sum insured an organization should have, looking at their balance sheet, looking at their type of data, looking at their global exposure. Yeah, so this is all about cyber liability insurance. Now we can open up the stage for Q&A. So participants, you feel free to type your questions in the chat box. Any questions from any participants? Yes, so we have one question from Mr. Sumit Batra. How to evaluate the insurance coverage required? Very interesting question. So what happens, as I mentioned, it is very difficult to understand and assess the real-time loss or quantum of loss followed by a cyber attack. So as a broker, what we do a peer group benchmarking exercise. We look at the turnover, we look at the global exposure, we look at the type of data which is under custody control of an organization, and we do a peer group benchmarking study, and we bring to the table that this is the limit what your peer group are purchasing and your peers are purchasing, and this is the range which you can look at. Otherwise, it is very difficult for anybody to come up with a concrete answer that this is the limit which any organization should have. So I'll give you example of Target. Target is a retail chain in the US. They had more than 250 stores under attack, under point of sale attack. We call it as POS. They had suffered a malware attack. Out of 250 stores, more than 200 stores, there was data compromise. So basically, a malware was inserted and it was stealing the information, credit card, debit card information, it was stealing. And this happened in 2014 at the time of Christmas. And more than 70 million users' data was actually stolen, and more than 40 million users' data was compromised. When we say compromised, it was actually misused by the hackers, and this 40 million individuals, they had suffered losses, financial losses as well. So Target was under attack, and they had $100 million cover at that time. That $100 million cover got eroded in no time in forensic investigation, regulatory fines, penalties, notification cost, public relation expenses, reconstitution expenses, and they had faced massive class action suit. This class action litigation followed by a cyber attack ideally falls under the purview of cyber liability policy, but their limit got eroded and they were left hand and dry. So this is the kind of, I would say, exposure an organization carries. Yeah, so I hope I could answer your question. We have another question from Mr. Samir Gupta. Cyber insurance is currently being provided by private insurers or public sector insurers? This is the question. So cyber insurance policy is majorly provided by private insurance companies. So we have some of the private leading insurance companies like Tata AIG, HDFC Ergo, ICICI Lombard, Bajaj Allianz, SBI General, these are some of the IFCO Tokyo, these are some of the private insurance companies who offer this cover. We have also public sector companies like New India, National, Oriental, United, but they have limited capacity. So when it comes to a highly technical subject like cyber liability, we look forward to private insurers. So again, we have a question from Mr. Sumit Batra. I will just read it out. For a 250 branch setup, they would have capacity. As a startup organization, we do not wish to take extremely high premium hit. Now we won't be shortly covered. Any formula or criteria based on balance sheet and income statement? So balance sheet and income statement is one of the criterias or one of the factors which insurance companies consider for underwriting. But majorly, even if it is a startup, and let's say it's a startup, but they are, assisting a US-based healthcare company. So the healthcare related information is resting on their server. Then it becomes a highly volatile, exposure. The premium will be high, and the insurance companies will not be interested in offering a cover for a $500,000 for such huge exposure. So it lot more depends on the kind of data you have and global exposure, whether you are serving to a US-based client, what is your turnover breakup, how much is your turnover generated from India, how much is your turnover generated from rest of the world, how much is coming from US, Canada. If it is skewed towards US, Canada, then obviously you need to look at least 2 million to 5 million limit to begin with. So we have another question from Mr. Samir Gupta. So Mr. Samir is saying, I'm an insurance consultant and want to explore this area. How can I work on this field and learn more about it? So being an insurance consultant, I'm sure you would be closely working with some of the clients. So when you closely work with clients, you actually get to understand the kind of exposure we are talking about. And as an insurance consultant, when you talk to insurance companies also, you get to know the kind of, wordings, the kind of coverage they are offering. Otherwise, you can, if you want to explore this area, you can partner or you can join hands with some of the brokers or intermediaries with whom you can work closely and you can get experience. I hope I've covered all the questions. Yeah. So any other questions? Fine. So we have no more questions coming in. So I would just like to close this session. So I would like to thank our esteemed speakers for enlightening speech, and your presence helped navigate discussion in the best possible manner. I would also like to thank all the participants for taking out time for today's webinar. It's been an honor to be able to present our perspective before you. So Mahindra Insurance Brokers will keep bringing such interesting sessions in future as well. Kindly follow our social media handle to get updates on upcoming virtual sessions. Thank you all and have a good day. Good evening.
Thank you, Vaisakhi.